you like throwing everybody off with their expectations of what you're going to do next?
We couldn't go with another wife of a politician.
Yeah, no.
We have been reading and being pitched so many of those. We thought.
Did you really? The lawyers or?
Lots of lawyers.
Yeah.
Lots of
Oh
lawyers.
my God.
Not even if you got William Shatner, huh? So what is the genesis of this idea in light of the contrast?
Well, 2 years ago there was a budget shutdown in D.C. and it seemed that no one was really being very sane about it. Everybody was like I understand political strategy and I enjoy political strategy because you can see that someone has an end result, an end zone that they've drawn that they want to cross. With the budget shutdown, it seemed to be where extremism just took over, extremism for its own sake, and to play to a political audience that was thinking in terms of pure terms, that there was no room for compromise. So that felt insane, and it also felt like a trend, because you're always, on Good Wife, we were always trying to look for trends. You never know 6 months out where it will be. Here, we knew it would probably be a year to 2 years out. So we were just looking for a trend, and the trend seemed to be that there was no longer room for compromise between the left and the right, because everybody had been pushed to the extremes.
And there is a way to address that straight on, but that would be so dull and so earnest.
Not with the real political situation.
Yeah, well, that's true too. But you needed to find a way to come at it from the left. So
we talked to Tony a little bit about how the comedic aspect of it is sort of like an escape from the reality of this craziness, but does a show like this, I mean, is there an importance to raising awareness of this insanity and you know, hopefully the audience can sort of do something about it, right? And you know, kind of take some lesson from it?
Yeah, I mean, we wanted it, you know, you want to do a serious show, but the last thing I want to watch is a serious show. I don't know why, my taste is not, I know House of Cards is good and everything, but at a certain point, I want to have some fun. And so, but on the other hand, you want people to have some fun, and like when you watch John Oliver, you watch it and you go, oh yeah, well those are some good points, or, you know, and you'll watch it maybe a second time, or watch a good show a second time, because you'll go, okay, the first time I was laughing so hard, or so thrilled or excited, I didn't really think what it was after. Our show kind of has a serious point underneath it. I hate just talking about that because that's not a joke, that's boring. I'd rather, you know, someone were behind us making fart jokes while we say it. But it's really the opposite of what you would expect from reading op-eds in New York Times or LA Times, which is the problem is not corruption in DC. The problem is purity. The problem is such an extreme purity that people no longer talk. There's a line in the pilot where Tony Shalhoub's character is saying, you know, I just hate that, you know, the biggest problem is these ethic rules. You know, that we can't, Republicans and Democrats don't talk to each other anymore because we don't get drunk, we don't, you know. So there was this, and by the way, when we were researching in DC, there were those complaints.
yeah,
that
lobbyists were saying that.
That it's kind of gotten out of hand. And yes, it was lobbyists saying it, but you also saw that there are not the same events that bring Republicans and Democrats together anymore. Even if those events were corrupt, they got people talking and compromising.
So I was going to say, my question with the parasite itself, you know, conceptually, was that always, you know, in general, what you had as the manner in which it was going to look, or did you kind of go through the entire process of, you know, different
Did you research your
ideas?
parasites? I mean, what parasites were the options?
You know,
We did, strangely.
Yes,
It's
we
embarrassing.
did.
You're
But-
making me blush, but yes, we did.
But we hit on brain-eating bugs pretty early from space, pretty early, because you had to have something that would fit on a meteor. So if you start there, you know,
Well, look,
immediately come to space-eating bugs.
Yeah, as Michelle says, this is hopefully a show that is a mix of Roger Corman and Patty Chayefsky. That's what it's really, and that's our sweet spot. And so when you talk about the Roger Corman part of it, we want it. I'm not terrified by things I see on the strain. I am terrified when I go down to the kitchen late at night, turn on the light, and there's a line of ants in the corner. I'm just, get me out of there. Go get someone. I'll call emergency. Are you here? 911 call. It's just the terrifying thing is not the big monster. The terrifying thing to me is that something will crawl on me when I sleep and crawl into some orifice. That's just like, no. So anyway, that I think it played off those fears. Was that your question though? Well, how did?
Also,
Did
in
we
terms
have-
of like the look itself, was it always something that was, not to kind of go into spoiler territory, but something that was relative to the insects that we're familiar with, or was it something
Yeah.
a little more elaborate?
No, you're exactly right. It's because it had to be a little bit familiar, so
Okay.
Look-
it was that much scarier.
And by the way, with new episodes, you'll see there are variations on that and things that
okay.
change. But we wanted to start with the familiar and something that if you saw in a corner, you would go, "Oh, that's just an ant trail," but also, "Oh God, that's an ant trail."
Have you seen the Star Trek episode where they went on the brain?
Yes.
The David
Oh, yeah.
Cronenberg, and of course you know the David Cronenberg film.
You know what?
Do you have a list of
We are not making.
50s and-
Here's the thing: we're not making because it wanted to be about politics. We grabbed some tropes. We grabbed some things that we've always enjoyed. I think we could get dinged for that, but we also didn't want people to get so involved with the horror and the things like that my mom won't enjoy it. My mom will enjoy the political satire and the romantic comedy, and she will accept the bug stuff because it's not kind of throwing her too much. So I think that's one of the reasons we didn't mind leaning into some of the sci-fi elements that exist.
You had mentioned purity and partisanship, and I was wondering if you guys have watched Veep, and whether you think that the sort of satirical worlds of your two shows negate one another, because that's a show that it's obviously all of the figures are fictional, but the characters themselves, it never reveals what the partisanship is, and it sort of seems to assert that that's all smoke and mirrors for the corruption. And so it seems like you guys have exactly the opposite approach. And
I think we might have that.
Except I love that show.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
they are
I
so
would-
witty. So.
And In the
Which show
Loop.
did you
Did you
say?
see the movie
Yes,
In the Loop?
I've seen
I would say
it.
even more that because In the
Yeah,
Loop
we-
seemed to be saying people are stupid. Which,
Yeah.
there's an
Great In
element.
the Loop.
Oh my God, is that a good movie? Sorry.
Oh, sorry. So as I told the rest of your cast, I've worked for the federal government and I lived in DC, so you've explained a lot to me now,
Good.
especially during sequestration. Now it makes sense. So you've transitioned from lawyers to alien brain parasites. So was there really much of a shift difference?
What's the difference, right?
There was indeed.
We were thinking the research was very odd. We had a writer's room of playwrights because we shot it in New York, but also had the writer's room in New York. And it was very odd. We would have to hang out with David McCullough, who's our tech advisor, who is chief of staff to Harry Reid, because we had an entomologist who had to tell us about bugs, about screwworms, which are these real bugs that actually eat human flesh.
Yes.
The Latin word for it is man-eater, and it's just they wheel into wounds. So anyway, it's very odd to go from talking about sequestration and how that worked, and then go into someone who talks about flesh-eating bugs and realizing, oh yeah, they are kind of the same conversation.
Aren't you worried that Alex Jones might pick up on this and claim this is another new conspiracy that Trump will reference as his source material?
It is always a worry. We actually were reading some of that, but also Paul Krugman had this thing about, if there were space aliens. So we've been looking at mentions of Alex Jones's kind of mention of outer space things and stuff to see how we can relate to it.
I thought what was interesting, it's a real cool mix of The West Wing and Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Thank you. That's right, that's where we were headed. I mean, you'll see it even with future episodes. In future episodes, there's even we dig deeper into some of the problems leading up to the need for a sequestration vote to open the government again and how difficult that is. But also there's a Tea Partier movement and also kind of a Bernie Bros movement that comes out of out of this budget shutdown. But also we're playing it as if it's happening during the presidential campaigin.
Yeah, it
It's
was
happening
brilliant
now.
using the sound bites of the
There-
candidates. They're a little scary, especially if you hear the cars at their rallies.
Do you have plans for the series? How long you see this as
Oh,
extending?
it's 13
Well,
episodes.
I know it's 13 now, but what if it's do you have?
We
If-
have
thoughts?
subsequent seasons. planned.
Okay,
We have-
okay.
We have 4 seasons planned if we get it, go ahead. The second year would take place in Wall Street. Third year would take place in Silicon Valley, and the fourth year would take place in, do you want to guess?
Let's
York?
see.
Hollywood.
Hollywood, of course.
We were just inspired by The Wire. The Wire, David Simons was so amazing about each year, kind of concentrating on a different place of Baltimore corruption, and we just wanted, as silly as the show could be, it wants to see how some of the same mistakes that went into 2008, basically recession, depression, can happen again. And so it's some of the Bernie Sanders stuff in the second year.
Are you fearful that the elections and subsequent history will eclipse the
Yes.
bizarreness and absurdity of the show?
There have been times where it felt like we were going as far as one could, and then you read the paper 2 days later, and it's just, oh my, it's gone 3 steps ahead of us.
The writers' room, because we started the writers' room last year, had proposed a story about a Supreme Court justice who died, and that there would be difficulty in selecting a new one. First of all, we thought that was a little boring, but also I don't think that would happen. And do we really want to say it? It's like, oh dear God. And we kept getting emails from the staff like, okay, you say that was unrealistic. Look what's going on right now.
When you decided to incorporate real-life political figures in this, was that sort of when you knew that this would be sort of an anthology series? Because I was thinking if this were to continue, then next season would probably be after the elections, and then you would have to, if you were sticking with these characters, address, your plots would be beholden to whatever happens to America. And was that something that you had discussed not wanting, and that's why you decided to go anthology, or, yeah?
We were, as soon as Trump entered the race,
Yeah.
and it seemed like things were getting a little absurdist, the writers' room, we all changed paths.
Uh-huh.
We just said, okay, even though this was supposed to happen in a kind of an alternate present where we never mentioned the president, we never mentioned specifics.
And we still don't.
We never mentioned the president because those shows always seem a little false to me.
Yeah.
But suddenly it was like, how could you ignore what was happening around us? Not just, by the way, with Trump, but also with Bernie Sanders,
Right.
making a really outsider effort, and how that played into some of the thoughts we were after. And we thought, can we pull it into the story in any way? And the difficulty sometimes comes down to FCC rules about equal time. It's not
That
all.
would enter into this.
It enters into it in a surprising way. You should think this is satire and you should be able to bite off anything you can.
Right.
But the worry is you need equal time for, if you put Trump on screen for a certain number of seconds, you need to put Hillary and whoever's still in the race. And so we were kind of leaving green screens. I don't know if you would know what green screens are, but
Yeah.
yes, up to the last minute so that we could, because we had Cruz in there for a while, thinking, Cruz would go all the way to the convention. So a part of it is dropping people out and then adding other people in as they join. Because you saw French just dropped out today.
Right.
I mean, it's just like, it's a crazy year. So yes, we thought the anthology thing you're talking about is more something that preceded what's happening now, but it also would be very interesting to see to what happens to Wall Street next year if Trump is president. It would, because his ideas are very unorthodox, one say.
So you're open to changing the trajectory of
Yeah.
your plot lines?
Oh, yeah, I mean, we have to be nimble, even just week to week.
Yeah.
But the expectation is we would take the same cast, the same characters, and then transplant them
Cool.
in a logical way to
Yeah.
a new setting.
But none of the members of The Good Wife will enter into this.
Well,
So I am thinking ahead in the right
yeah, we have actors we use, but then we have been talking about whether to have a lawyer. At a certain point, our leads need a lawyer, and we were going to bring over one of the, as if they're an alternate universe of this universe.
I could see Eli in
Would
there
it be?
somewhere.
Yes.
There were so many good characters on there,
Oh my
and
God,
you could
Eli.
see Alan Cumming, for
Oh my
example.
God, that'd be
But
amazing.
there are
Except
also
he's
some,
on a
Or his
singing
daughter.
guitar.
Yeah.
Marissa.
yeah.
Yeah.
Did CBS ever say the ick factor in some of the scenes? Did CBS say, we don't know about this?
The ick factor?
The
The
ick
ick.
factor.
Yeah, I mean, every scene you see on network television, they're looking for either the ick factor or the we don't show that much violence factor, whatever. So you've never seen anything on network TV that hasn't been looked at.
So we were worried most about the head explosion.
Yeah.
So we had it storyboarded. We showed them different ways to do it, and it always came down to we have to see it. when we did it, because we kept saying tonally, it's not like Criminal Minds or NCIS. I mean, it's not like having someone shot in the head where there's a reality to like, oh my God, head explosion from a gun. It was always supposed to be a little silly and a little scanners, but with a, but with a wink. And so it was only when they saw it that there weren't any problems, which was good.
And what's good about this too is because it's something that can't be repeated. I mean, in other words, if you show someone being shot on another show, God forbid, but somebody could copy it.
Yes.
No one's copying space bugs invading someone's brain and exploding, you know, so that.
we know.
So yes, as far as we know. So that buys us some latitude too.
With the good,
One
Mhm.
more question, yeah.
oh, no.
Yeah, go.
Okay?
Diane and Kurt were like my favorite romantic pairing on The Good Wife, and of course on here you have a Republican and Democrat in a romantic situation.
Right.
Despite the absurdity that's going to be going down, will we have any of those kind of fun conversations between
Yeah,
them
absolutely.
that will kind of get our brains flowing?
That's
What's left of them?
That's certainly, yeah, the hope.
Sorry.
I would say it's sort of a theme. I mean, we like seeing characters who don't agree with each other on
Challenge
everything.
each other.
Yeah, who challenge each other and who can find love and common ground despite having different ideologies.
It's also the saving, the positive message in the show is that people talk past their politics. And so many of the people in the show will not be able to because of space bugs or because in reality they just won't because they're Tea Partiers or Bernie Bros or whatever. What we thought was interesting, have a romantic comedy element that was actually the most positive thing in the show. Because these were two people who had struggled with the fact that, you know, he wants small government, she doesn't, you know, he doesn't believe in global warming, she does, you know, things like that. But can they talk past their problems and really even fall in love is the question. That, I think, is the main positive aspect of the show.
So if we have hopes for any continuation of The Good Wife, this is the chance.
Yes, that's right.